All right, everyone, happy January 6th to all you New Yorkers because you're about to see a skyrocketing property crime on par with San Francisco. Considering the population is so much larger and the area more compact, it'll probably be worse. Alvinbragg, the new incoming city attorney there, has decided, hey, we don't really need to prosecute all these, lesser crimes, things like vandalism and simple assault and larceny. That we're only going to go after like rape and murder, significant crimes. Meanwhile, I guarantee that they'll still be ticketing people and spending their time going door to door, making sure that people are mask and vax compliant. That's significant. Murder, that's significant. Simple assault, I guess don't bother calling the police. No, you can't defend yourself either because then you're probably a felon in New York City. You're going to devolve into San Francisco. Now, first let me though praise one part of this. This may sound strange because this is a far leftoid. This is another city where Antifa will go around and burn Wendy's, and it's like, well, it's just arson. Nobody got hurt. It's just you can rebuild the property. You got fire insurance, right, kid? It sucks to be you. You have to spend the next year rebuilding, and your workers will be out of work, and you won't be making income, but you rebuild, right? Over and over again. They'll just come back and burn the Wendy's down. They love the smell of charred meat, apparently. I'm sure they're the kind of people that take their steak well done. Not many cool people do, razor fist aside. But the good part is that this will affect drug crimes. That's a good thing. You shouldn't be prosecuting people for doing drugs. I don't even think you should prosecute them for dealing drugs because I think buying drugs should be legal. What about gun crime, though? If you have a magazine that's too big, I bet they'll prosecute that. They'll prosecute you if you're unvaxxed and go into the business. I'm sure they'll still send the Gestapo in. There'll be a dozen heavily armed riot officers there if you take off your mask at the wrong time in the store. But if you go into that store with a mask, punch out a window, grab a TV, and walk off with it, nobody's going to do a goddamn thing. Now, we already saw, and this is why this is completely goddamn insane, what happens in places like San Francisco when this occurs. Businesses shutter. They put up plywood over their windows and they don't even bother to open. Hey, we're losing $20,000, $30,000 of revenue a day because people walk in, grab things. It is effectively decriminalized for them to do this, and they walk out without paying. We're not even allowed to stop them. Why would we bother opening as a business? We're just going to put everything in the warehouse, lock up the warehouse, and say, well, I guess we got to wait until, sanity is restored or we have to move our business. Tens of thousands of people have moved out of that general area, mainly to Florida and Texas. And by the way, to people, this is a perpetual bitch that I have with some conservatives. They're like, well, these Californians are moving to Texas and making Texas like Democrats. No, actually, they're largely registering Republican. They're leaving because they don't agree with those policies. Believe it or not, there are conservatives in the inner city. They're there because they're like, well, I've got a good job and stuff. I don't like all these fucking hippies around, but I'm making six figures. It's pretty good. But then they get pushed over the edge because the government won't protect them against crime despite paying huge amounts of taxes for the police. And then they say, well, okay, fuck it. I'll take the pay cut and I'll move to Texas. I'll take the pay cut and I'll move. Even the inner cities of Florida will be safer than some of the suburbs of San Francisco. Why would I stay here and pay 2 or 3 times as much, even with that higher salary? I don't want my kids to get abducted. I don't want my wife to get her crotch cut in half. I don't want my legs to be torn out of my body and beaten to death with my own legs. I don't want my house burned down by Antifa members. I'm going to Florida. And then I'll buy a gun. These people, by and large, are not taking blue state rhetoric with them. There's a reason why the Trump victory margin was greater in many of these states where people are migrating to in the last election as opposed to the prior one. It's not just because of the expat votes, it's also because Hispanics are getting tired of being lumped in with illegal aliens all the time as though those two terms were synonymous. There will be a red wave in the next election. It's just a matter of how big it is and whether it results in the removal of Joseph Biden from his asterisk position. I hope that happens. Now, what will happen here? On the one side, you've got the de facto decriminalization of drugs, including simple dealing and jaywalking and all this other horseshit that shouldn't be policed. That's good. I have no problem with that. I think that should be nationwide. There shouldn't even be a drug scheduling system. Do what you want. You are a free person. If you jaywalk, just don't get hit by a car because it won't be their fault. You don't want to wear a seatbelt and you get ejected from the car? No suing the manufacturer even if it's a goddamn lemon. I don't care about these things. None of these things should be enforced. Privately maintained road. No speed limit needed. Go ahead unless you're on the highway. But then there are significant crimes, as we've seen in San Francisco and other cities, that they stop enforcing and all hell breaks loose. Mainly you're talking about property crime. Well, the problem is that when people in the community, here's the death spiral of this. This will be undone in due time. They'll make like San Francisco, which is far further left than any part of New York City, by the way. They're the Fruit Loops of the Fruit Loops. They are the creme de la creme. They're the purple Fruit Loops, the really fruity ones. Fucking crazy people. What will happen is that businesses will begin putting up shutters and leaving. Business owners will say fuck it. They will sell their business front if they can find a buyer, and they'll move to Florida or Texas, and they won't take, by and large, their blue state bullshit with them. And then they'll go and buy the ranch home. Once they realize how cheap property is in parts of Texas, they'll say, why didn't I move sooner? And in northern Florida. Businesses will begin to close up. People will be assaulted more frequently. Their homes will be broken into more frequently. And in New York City, you can't defend yourself. You have a duty to retreat. Where you're going to retreat when you're on the 5th floor in a 3-bedroom apartment, I'm not exactly sure. I guess you're supposed to just put on your anal plug and your chastity belt and kiss your ass goodbye because only the criminals are allowed to use guns there. The police won't respond to calls. If you call them and say, hey, there's a burglar in my house, well, what else is new? Yeah, we got burgled they'll be burglarizing the police department. What's, by the way, to stop someone from doing that? What's to stop a mob from going to the police department, smashing out the window saying, you're not allowed to shoot us. We're not attacking you. You're not allowed to do anything to us. We're not going to get charged with any crime because the city attorney won't charge us for simple vandalism. Get out of the fucking way. Put down your guns. We're taking those too. It's just larceny. The feds might charge us, but then they probably won't even cooperate with the feds. You're going to end up with a spiraling violence, and this is really going to hurt the Democrats. They already have legendarily low approval because of the defund the police diatribe, and much like with critical race theory, they no longer, by and large, most of the sane Democrats anyway, they no longer support critical race theory. They just support critical race theory minus the term critical race theory. Remember my metaphor about the potato and the pomme de terre? You're giving two different labels to the same thing. Once you begin describing them, you see that they are essentially identical. The same is happening with defund the police. They've divorced it from the term, but as we see here and in San Francisco and elsewhere, they're still going ahead with the idea. It's just that they don't want there to be a central term that opponents of these policies can coalesce around. Once there's a central term, once something is defined, it's easier to corral it, to describe it, and it's easier to fight it if you oppose it. It's also easier to support it. They would rather get rid of the central term, so it's no longer defund the police, it's police reform. Or it's just a local action. That's not part of the defund the police movement. I'm just saying that I don't want to prosecute the nonviolent defenders. That's fine. Simple assault and arguably, in some cases, trespass, certainly arson, they're violent in nature. Yes, when you break into somebody's property, you are being violent to them. You are imposing upon them, violating the NAP. You're not doing that by jaywalking. You're not doing that by smoking weed or fucking crack. You're not doing it by dealing heroin. All of those things are voluntaristic activities. I don't believe in enforcing them either. Shouldn't even have drug scheduling. Having a 200-round magazine doesn't violate the NAP. Doesn't hurt anyone unless you're shooting at them. Breaking into their property, stealing their car, destroying their business, and causing potentially dozens of people to go out of work, that does. I loved it during the height of the anti-police fentanyl Floyd riots that we saw. I loved it when they're like, well, it's just a business. They can rebuild. They've all got fire insurance and shit. Like the Wendy's and Walmart and stuff burning in Kenosha and elsewhere. And I tried to point out, what happens to all the low-wage employees there? They're not working. They don't have a job right now. It will take you a year to rebuild the business. What are they supposed to do? Thousands of people were put out of work. These are workaday people. These are minimum wage workers and middle classers and stuff. These aren't CEOs and shit. For each store, you got the managers making six figures. The department managers aren't. They're making like 30, 40K. The janitor's not making six figures, unless it's in San Francisco and he's still living 5 people to a single room apartment because that's all you can afford with six figures there. You got to be a millionaire to live there and have any semblance of decency. These are normal, regular people, and this is why the Democrats are goddamn stupid. They don't understand. Take the L on this and on critical race theory, leave those issues alone and focus on something else and your approval will rise. But they won't. Because the leftoids in the big cities, places like New York and San Francisco, refuse to shut up. This is also known as the Manchin effect. Manchin represents a state in which 60% of people oppose Build Back Better, which is why it's dead. It will never pass, which is, by the way, very good for the nation. They just can't comprehend the fact that New York City and San Francisco, that their penthouses and golf courses aren't the whole country. There's a whole lot in between the coasts. They don't get it. That's about all. Peace out.